Welcome to School Zone, the podcast for the Oklahoma Public School Resource Center. You know, usually we try and bring in really well-known folks, but today we just got this guy named Joe Dorman in. So
it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks for joining the show, Joe. So for folks that don't know, Joe's the head of OICA, which I always mess up at least one of the acronyms, and I don't feel bad because everyone messes up the OPSRC. So tell us about OICA, Joe.
The Oklahoma Institute for Child Advocacy was formed 36 years ago as a result of a lawsuit, the Terry D. lawsuit, where teenage plaintiffs filed suit against DHS for the conditions they faced, and the court saw fit to recognize the problems that were there and force changes to happen. The Oklahoma Commission on Children and Youth was created as a state agency for the oversight of DHS, and we were created as a nonprofit voice outside of government to try and implement change through work at the Capitol and getting Oklahomans engaged in the process more.
It's almost like you have some experience at the legislature and in the legislative process attached to some of the work here at OICA.
Well, for the people that don't know, I did my 12 years hard time at the state Capitol, serving in the House of Representatives. I was a representative for District 65, which was Grady, Caddo, Comanche, Cotton, and Stevens counties. Also ran for governor in 2014, had the opportunity to travel around the state and meet a lot of great Oklahomans. And following that race, took a couple of years off away from politics, but then the opportunity to go to work at OICA presented itself, and I've enjoyed it, getting back into that advocacy side, the policy-making side, and working with lawmakers to shape better laws.
Before we get into the policy deep stuff, I think the listeners probably want to know, are you still involved with the Rush Springs Watermelon Festival?
I've taken a break from the Rush Springs Watermelon Festival.
Really?
The Lions Club does that. I'm not able to attend meetings on Tuesdays. I still help from a distance, help them secure people to crown the Watermelon Queen. Go every year. In fact, we hold our class reunions during the Watermelon Festival, and this year will be my 30th reunion.
And when is that? I have not been to the Watermelon Festival.
Got to give that pitch. It's the second Saturday of August every year in Rush Springs. Town of 1,200 people, and on that one day, on that Saturday, we will have 30,000 visitors on a good year.
That's awesome. I like me a good festival. So.
And it's watermelon. You can't beat it.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Especially because it's, I'm sure it's perfect weather in August in Rush Springs, right?
Always it falls on one of the 3 hottest days of the year, and down in the park, there's very little wind. So we've had some good weather the last couple of years. We hope that'll
with
keep
the chrome
going.
dome. You just keep a rag handy for that.
You better believe it. Bernie's fortunately, we got a lot of trees down there and provide some shade. It's a great family-friendly, fun festival, so I encourage people to go to it.
Cool. And so I want to dive in and spend some time on all the different work that OICA's got going on, because there's a ton of it, and all of it's really important. I know this week was it up in Tulsa? There was a meeting looking at ACEs, right, and trauma and the impact on ACEs. For those that aren't familiar with the term, is you help me out here. I'm going to mess it up again.
Adverse
it's a Friday, okay?
I understand. Between that and trauma-informed care, we've got a lot going on at the Capitol. We've had our hand in much of this, from the Fallon administration carrying forward into the Stitt administration. On Thursday, March 28th in the evening, we had a partnership between OICA, the Tulsa World, Tulsa Lawyers for Children, Emerson Orthodontics, and the Potts Family Foundation to show resilience. It's a documentary that talks about the history of the study of adverse childhood experiences, which I would say is probably one of the #1 health concerns in modern times, and people need to learn more about it. It tracks the trauma, the toxic trauma that children face in their youth, and what those outcomes will lead to as adults, between cardiac issues, with hypertension, with loss of productivity in the workplace, and even a longevity of life, of seeing a reduction in your lifespan. We were very fortunate. The First Lady of the state, Sarah Stitt, was the moderator. We had a panel of 6 individuals who were able to speak about ACEs and what we experience in Oklahoma. Oklahoma is #1 in the nation for multiple adverse childhood experiences. And
not exactly a title we're looking to hold.
No, absolutely not. And we also see...
Why is that?
It's a generational issue. With what we see in Oklahoma, with being #1 in the world in incarceration rates, with the obesity rate we have, with teen pregnancy rates, all of this ties back to childhood trauma. and what impact this will have on the kids, and then it carries forward into adult, and in turn, what we have to pay for as taxpayers. So if we can turn this around at the generational level, work with preventative programs, help parents learn to be better parents, we're going to reduce these costs long-term with the children and the trauma they experience and the outcomes they face.
So yes, let's delve into that a little bit deeper. This is a cycle. I mean, it's a self-perpetuating cycle, right? So you have a population that has a high experience. We can't do anything about, we can't prevent the ACEs, the childhood experiences that the folks have gone through. So what do we do to break that cycle?
People need to go to the CDC website and take the test, and you can Google adverse childhood experiences. It's a 10-question survey, and then the CDC has the extended version. When people take the test, or when they even hear about this, it's almost like a veil is lifted, and they realize what they experienced as a child oftentimes translates into the problems they're facing now, and sometimes when that's transferred to the children. And I oftentimes will ask people, can you name someone who wants to be a bad parent? Sure. Nobody sets out
who doesn't care about their kids?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
It's people just simply don't know how to be good parents. And the programs that we have in place in Oklahoma, like Parent Promise, those were the first ones that were cut when the health department took their cut when they initially thought there were funds that had gone missing. We spend about 5% of the healthcare budget on preventative programs. We need to look at that and increase those levels more. It will reduce the cost long term, and in turn reduce the cost of incarceration, what we spend in the Department of Corrections, and long term with those health conditions we face with high blood pressure and obesity and long-term health concerns.
Okay, so folks can go out and learn more at the CDC website. What about this documentary? Is Resilience available? Something that folks can go check out on a Netflix or something like that? Or
they can't do that, but the Potts Family Foundation arranges for showings for organizations. If there's a group out there that wants to show it, they will work with them. Okay. Also, the Tulsa United Way has a copy of it, and we will work with individuals if they reach out to us. We co-hosted this event last night. We found partners to cover the cost. We had almost 200 people in the theater watching it last night.
That's fantastic.
And most of the people had not seen it, and so we were very happy to do that. We're hoping to do something in Oklahoma City sometime soon. And also, Superintendent Hoffmeister has been making this an effort in her administration to reach out to the schools to increase awareness of ACEs and trauma-informed care. So we're getting that information out to all the schools in the state.
Cool. Yeah, I know the State Department had put on a big workshop. I think it was at the Cox Convention Center, and it's sold out.
Yes.
It was just, I think something like 600 to 800 people or something. That's pretty great. So at least we know we're shining a spotlight on the problem. So
the more awareness we can raise on this issue, the more we're getting things turned around. And the lawmakers are also receptive to this. OICA or 2 interim studies, the first one in the House 2 years ago, and then last year in the Senate. And to be able to show the lawmakers, my former colleagues, more information about this issue and let them see that, yes, this is a severe problem, but yes, we also have solutions. They're paying attention, and we have legislation going through this year, House Bill 1022, a follow-up of Senate Bill 1517 from last year. Senate Bill 1022 is going to add lawmakers to the Trauma-Informed Care Task Force and other individuals to make recommendations to the legislature for solutions they can present in amending the law and through appropriations.
Cool. And we're not trying to say that, we think that our legislators have gone through an adverse child experience, but
when the lawmakers, we call it ALES, adverse legislative experience.
Yes.
But we did, to be serious, we have one lawmaker this year that shared his story of abuse as a child, and it can affect anyone.
It affects anyone. I know that it's probably a higher, rate in low-income folks, but that does not preclude folks from any tax bracket from being affected by this stuff. Right?
That's exactly right. The First Lady of Oklahoma even has talked about her experiences as a child and the trauma of what her mother went through and in turn what she saw. And she's made it her mission to impact in a positive way more opportunities for training with mental health and to increase awareness for adverse childhood experiences. So we appreciated that partnership.
That's really exciting. That is. All All right, so OIC is doing a ton of stuff. So focus on ACEs and the impact on trauma in our communities. Tell me about Chalk the Vote.
Chalk the Vote is our effort to try and raise awareness in the schools about the information that's available for dealing with trauma with children, and also to get teachers more engaged. We want to go around, do a roadshow, provide the information for teachers to understand their rights in the system. We want to see voter turnout increase, and we want to see that awareness of how the lawmakers are performing when it comes to child well-being, and make sure teachers understand that. The teachers, we need them at the polls now more than ever, and they've recognized that through the walkout last year, through continuing their advocacy. They need to stay engaged and have that information. OICA wants to provide that to them.
Yeah, and I'm shocked at how, I can't remember the specific statistics, but I didn't see statistics from this past election, but I've seen statistics from previous elections where teacher turnout it's terrible at the polls.
It has been, and we understand teachers are busy. I mean,
sure.
During the school day, it's hard for them to get away on a Tuesday.
Yep.
But oftentimes teachers forget that they can go vote early absentee at the county courthouse the weekend before the election. They even request a ballot by mail. Last year, we tried to encourage teachers to send in for their absentee ballot and then vote together in the teacher's lounge and send them in together. Or
I like to encourage people to give me their ballots, and I'll make sure that I fill it out for them. So
people would never trust me with their ballot.
Yeah.
If that had been the case, I might have been governor.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Yeah, that didn't work out so well. Was it South Carolina where the guy was doing something like that? So
there have been issues everywhere.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have seen there is very little voter fraud in Oklahoma. We have a very good system put in place. The state election board does a lot to regulate that. And so it's been a lot of fun to continue to work in those aspects as well. Voter turnout is a big priority for me. As a young person, I worked with those voter drives. As a lawmaker, I tried to encourage students to get registered when they were 18. Now getting to continue that, trying to encourage educators and in turn their students who are old enough to vote to register. It's been a lot of fun. And we've got a couple of great working with us. Sharon Pyatt and Claudia Swisher are co-chairs of that.
Cool.
So we're reaching out through social media to get more educators involved.
Do you think the younger educators understand the connection between Chalk the Vote and Rock the Vote?
We did that on purpose. I remember Rock the Vote from my days.
Yeah, man, it was like the coolest thing, right?
It absolutely was. I still have some of those old stickers. I'll get one for you.
Yeah.
The message we're trying to share there is it's important to take advantage of your right, and you can't vote unless you take that first step and register to vote. And there are a couple of good bills going through to allow young people to pre-register while they're 17, and then they will hold that ballot at the state election board and allow them to go into the system on their 18th birthday. So
those are still alive?
It is still alive, and we're hoping that will continue through the process because that will increase turnout and allow those young people to have a stronger voice.
Cool. Very cool. So Chalk the Vote is not bringing back chalkboards into the classroom, though I'm a fan of chalkboards. I'm not a big fan of the markers.
They used to think it was punishment to send you out and have to clap out those erasers and almost asphyxiate, but those were fun.
To ruin when I taught, I ruined a bunch of pants because I didn't have time for the erasers. So I just, I'd use my hand, I'd wipe it off and use my hands. And I'd get to the end of the day and, just have chalk all over my pants. But I feel like it was more efficient, and you can really get your point across when you smack the chalk against the board. You just can't do that with markers.
Absolutely. I feel sorry for kids these days. They've missed out on that experience of a blackboard.
Yes, indeed. So, but I think we're probably in the minority on wanting to bring those back.
Probably.
Cool. So you mentioned the couple bills. I know there's a number of other bills you guys are working on. Do you want to highlight any more?
One bill we were working on, unfortunately, it's held over till next year, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. J.D. Nolan was carrying legislation to restructure how school suspensions happen, to increase the access to counseling services for those young people when they act out. It ties back into ACEs. These kids are experiencing trauma at home. They come to school. They act out. Oftentimes the school or teacher doesn't know what's going on. then they send the child home suspended, putting them right back full-time into that traumatic experience. So we wanted to have more availability for counseling to determine what might be going on with that child and get DHS involved if there's an issue. She's holding that over to look at the definitions of assault when it comes to when a child will act out and lash out towards a teacher. And we're going to be a part of that. And we were thankful that she's being thoughtful on this and not putting a bill up where it might have
adverse effects.
Yeah, it might fail on the floor.
Yeah, I know one of the big concerns whenever we start talking about alternatives to suspension is, are teachers going to be protected? Are they going to be supported in the classroom? We obviously don't want teachers to be in an unsafe environment, and we don't want, unruly classrooms, right? I send my kids to school, I want them. But the flip side, just to highlight what you're talking about was, what's the point of a suspension, right? Like, what's our goal? We're not trying to hurt a kid, right? We're trying to restore, provide some clear guidelines, right? And if a child's going through or has gone through traumatic experiences or doesn't have the right support at home, then suspension's not getting anything but, a few days respite for the teacher in the classroom, but, not really solving the problem. So
it's the same argument that we see with criminal justice reform. What are we accomplishing by locking people up for a lifetime sentence when other states may do 7 to 10 years? What are we accomplishing by sending those kids home for an entire semester when we're putting them into an environment where they're going to possibly be abused? And a suspension, the numbers are there to show that it is a pipeline to prison. Yeah. The more kids who are suspended, the likelihood is greater they're going to end up incarcerated and be a detriment to the taxpayer, and we'll be paying for them through tax dollars.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think the hard part then is, how do we find ways where the teacher still feels like they have control and then the student gets the support that they need? I've seen the terms used, restorative justice sometimes. I've seen some rooms where schools have designated just sort of when a kid is sort of just losing it, right? Like we all have bad days. Kids probably, a little more, if they're, they can be sort of a little more sort of just lose it completely because they don't have full control over their emotions.
Well, one program that's available out there is the Handle with Care program. I think I've got that term right, where when law enforcement shows up into a situation and a child is involved, they will contact the school, not give any information out, but basically use the code Handle with Care. So everyone in the administration, including the teachers, will know that child went through something horrible last night. If something happens and they break down, just know it's in response to what they just went through where law enforcement was brought in. It's growing in awareness, and we're seeing more communities in the state recognize that as well as across the nation. So these are things we can do without passing laws that will help these kids.
Yeah, yeah. And I think just, look, as a teacher, it's hard and I taught students with behavior disorders at the high school level, right? It's hard to be compassionate to a kid when they're throwing F words out at you and tossing chairs. But yeah, being able to separate that and realize there's probably something involved here, right? There's probably something that's driving that behavior that has got nothing to do with the teacher. We shouldn't excuse that behavior, but we should find ways to really address it. So.
Exactly. And I remember back to my high school days, there was a band trip where 2 seniors and 2 freshmen got caught with a bottle of alcohol. Their punishment was to sit in a classroom for the rest of the semester with a different teacher who was on their break, sitting in there making sure they did their work. They didn't send them home. They were there at the school still, and they did have to find extra space, but we all thought that was a horrible punishment. And things like that, we just have to get creative and make sure those kids receive a just punishment, but they learn the lesson from it, and most importantly, we work to try and help them overcome whatever was the cause of that lashing out.
Yeah. No, I think that's important. I think Representative Nolan should be commended for that work. So, you mentioned the ACEs bill. Is that one still alive?
It is. Senator Haste has it over in the Senate right now. We're hoping that it will pass. It's currently a 17-member task force, and we're expanding it to 25. We're going to have 4 lawmakers added on so they can hear themselves these issues and carry it back to their colleagues. Right now, the legislation reads where it would be a Democrat and a Republican from each body. And then we also have some appointments for Governor Stitt to make, so he can be involved with this. A lot of this started with Governor Fallon and the first gentleman, Wade Christensen. He went to a conference in Wisconsin put on for first spouses to learn about ACEs and trauma-informed care. He and I were visiting afterwards, and it helped lead to the creation of this task force initially. And now we're revising it to add more people on and give Governor Stitt more ownership on it. And the First Lady is very interested in this topic, so we know she's going to be heavily involved as well.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. So while we're on legislation, I'm going to ask you to get your crystal ball out. April 1st is a big day. What are your predictions for the legislative cycle? So we still got a ways to go, but a lot of folks want to know what's education going to get? What you think? Where do you think we are?
It's still tough to tell. I know the lawmakers have made the commitment, especially Speaker McCall, where they want to see a teacher pay raise. He's also carrying the legislation for a tax credit. I believe we'll see something as far as a pay raise. I'm hoping that the school employees will also receive something. My mom was a special needs teaching assistant, so we can't forget those individuals who are working to help the teachers as well. I'm hoping that we will see something significant go through this year. I know the request is for about 1,200, so I'm hoping we'll see that. I'm hoping state employees also have that option, because we need to treat all of our employees that are working, receiving taxpayer dollars, that they all deserve a raise. We're also hearing good things about the COLA that will help out retired educators. So I'm hoping something
It's passed the
will happen
House.
Yes, it passed the House, and we're hoping that will see success in the Senate. We're still not hearing what the numbers will be, and I know the deadline for funding education is April 1st, but I think we still see some commitments out there, and I'm hoping that will proceed, and we'll see some good things in May when the appropriations process comes around.
Cool. And we've got a new governor. How do you see have things changed in terms of how the governor's office is interacting with the legislature? And I mean, clearly you've got a good relationship with the First Lady, but sort of how's that all working out?
I had the chance to tell the governor at his inauguration that I was jealous that he was getting to do the job I wanted to do, but he also has the environment I only dreamed of, where you had a legislature that wants to work with the governor. And it's evident with the lawmakers, and especially the legislative leaders, there is a camaraderie there unlike what we've ever seen in state history, in my opinion. The governor has been fantastic. He just drops in individual lawmakers' offices and, hey, what's up?
That. Yeah.
It's a completely different environment. It's friendlier. It's a lot less toxic than what we even saw last year when the budget battles were happening. The Democrats and Republicans are getting along. The Senate and the House are getting along better than they usually do. The governor has been great as far as being a part of this discussion. I really feel confident that honeymoon period that a governor sees each administration, this is going to carry forward even longer. I'm optimistic about the future.
Joe Dorman, the optimist.
That doesn't happen very often.
I'm impressed.
I'm a realist, not an optimist, but I'm optimistic about this.
Good. No, that's exciting. I've been excited as well. You just don't know, is this just a honeymoon? Or are we going to run into, I think probably the biggest, just when all of the budget's got to come together, I think that's when it can get tough. But let's hope that some of the goodwill and the relationships that folks have built can get us through that period.
And the cabinet members that he's assembled they're fresh faces for the most part. You see some people who have had experience with government, but a lot of them are delving in. They're proven business leaders, and they're taking those same concepts and that drive and applying it to their current jobs. Most of them doing this work free of charge. They're not getting paid.
Wow.
But they want to see better things for the state. And I've even volunteered and offered my services any way that I can help out with the administration, because these problems we're facing are not partisan issues.
Yeah.
I don't view my role in any way tied to any type of partisan divide. We're there to fix issues for kids, and that's what we want to see at OICA. That's what many in the nonprofit world want to see.
Amen.
Answers.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard said there's no partisan way to pick up trash. I mean, so much of what government does, it's got nothing to do with blue, red, left, right, Democrat, Republican. It's about doing the right thing.
That's exactly right. And we're seeing that come out of this legislature. We're seeing this come out of the governor's office. The team as a whole, I'm more optimistic about the future for Oklahoma now than I have been in a very long time.
Fantastic. You guys put on a ton of events at OICA. Tell me about some of those.
We just talked about the one we held with the Resilience Film in Tulsa.
Yeah.
We also have our Child Advocacy Day coming up on May 8th, and that's where we encourage Oklahomans to come together, come to a training on how to speak to lawmakers, how to communicate with them, and then actually go and visit with the lawmakers. We hold this at the Capitol. We also hold an advocacy luncheon where we have an individual come in and talk about their experiences of the trauma in their youth and ways that individuals can get involved in supporting OICA and helping out. In October, we have our Fall Forum. It's our annual conference where we assemble child advocates from around the state to sit down for a couple of days and help us draw up a legislative agenda, discuss the problems, but also come up with solutions. And then also we have a banquet in July. It's called the Heroes Ball, where we encourage people to show up, wear superhero costumes, have fun, but we also recognize child advocates, child heroes, the real-life heroes that are doing that work out in Oklahoma. And in conjunction with that Heroes Ball, we do a Sidekicks Ball for kids where it's free babysitting.
Okay.
But we allow the kids to come to the ball, and we have people dressed up as superheroes so they can take a picture with their favorite superhero.
Oh, that's fun.
They do a comic book college for the kids talking about what the superhero, their origin story, and we show a movie. And so it's great for the kids to have something to do that's fun there while the adults are downstairs celebrating
acting like children.
Heroes.
Yeah. Cool. What are you going to go as this year?
Last year I dressed as the Shadow, a pulp hero. Before that, I went as Lex Luthor because I have the right haircut.
There you go.
This year, I'm not sure. I've got to come up with some ideas. We have 4 themes that we're currently voting on. It's either Batman's 80th birthday, or celebrating girl power with the Captain Marvel movie. Foster kids are a prominent part of the Shazam movie that's coming out soon. Billy Batson is a foster child in a home. And then Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, 2 of the legends in the comic book industry, have passed away over the last year. And so we're thinking about doing a tribute to them and the characters they created.
I wasn't expecting such an in-depth answer.
My hobby is collecting comic books. Part of the reason I'm still single probably is I have about 30,000 comic books.
I did not know this.
And it's been a fun hobby. My parents used comic books to teach me how to read.
That's great.
And we were dirt poor, so they would buy comic books at garage sales and flea markets.
I just heard I was listening to a podcast this morning where someone was talking about they were big into comic books, and to learn other languages, how they got started in the language was they would get a translated version because they knew, the comic books. I just never been into comic books, but yeah, I was like, wow, I never would have thought of that. But, and the guy said, look, it's not a perfect way to learn a language, but, I can pick up some vocabulary right away. And then that gets me going. I thought it was pretty fascinating.
Well, I've loved it, tying my hobby into the literacy rates and tying it back into work. And I wish I could say I came up with the theme for our banquet. One of my staffers did, but I took the ball and ran with it.
That's cool.
That's one of the fun passions I have, and everyone wants to be a hero. And so this is a way that we, in a way, can be heroes for kids and recognize those real heroes.
That's fantastic. So just so that everyone gets those straight, we've got May 8th is your advocacy day, and they can go. So it's at the Capitol. Do they sign up? Do they come to your website?
Yes, we want them to register at oica.org. We partner with Let's Fix This and some other programs. We will have tables for organizations to set up and raise awareness about the child advocacy work that they're doing. We just recently had Women and Children's Health Day put on by the March of Dimes at the Capitol. It was a great success.
Cool.
So we're seeing more.
Was that just yesterday?
Yes.
I think I saw that on the news last night.
It was on March 28th, and it was a great event. There were plenty of opportunities for individuals to go to the Capitol, but a lot of people are afraid to go out there, and it's
intimidating. Yeah. I know before I spent some time up there, it was like, you get in the building, what do I do? Where do I go? How do I talk to folks? And good. Do you know who your speaker is going to be on May 8th?
We're working on putting together the schedule. We're certainly hoping the Secretary of Health, Stephen Buck, will be there. He's been a regular each and every year. Rodney Timms is going to be our keynote speaker. Rodney is a former OICA board member who also had his own experiences with childhood trauma, and he wrote a book about this, and he will have his book there at the luncheon. And special guests show up. It's going to be at the governor's pavilion right behind the mansion. So we're making it easy and accessible for the administration. Hopefully we'll see some members of the administration there, and lawmakers oftentimes will come across the street on their lunch break and participate.
Cool. So it's easy for folks to be there and then get to the Capitol as well. Right?
And for the luncheon, it's usually a suggested donation of $100, but it's a suggested donation.
Okay.
And so we want people to give what they can. Some people give more. Some people aren't able to give $100, but we want to do our part there to share that message. And if people want to sign up to be a table captain and bring friends, we can set things up where they would be recognized and have a sponsorship too.
Cool. Fantastic. And then you mentioned the other events. The Heroes Ball is going to be on July 26th. Information again at oica.org. Do you have your date for the Fall Forum?
I believe it's October 3rd and 4th, and it will be at the State Capitol building. And we're getting everything set up with that. We're still working on a speaker for that. We have some high hopes, so we want to try and get somebody government and talk about children's issues nationwide this year.
Cool.
And we also want to try and engage more elected officials at different levels. We'd like to focus on some of those municipal issues and have some of the mayors participate and recognize that a lot of these childhood traumatic issues can be impacted at the local level. And for example, if you have great park space where kids go and play, it increases those activities outside, lets them get more exercise and in turn more energy. So we want to try and work with our partners at all levels to provide those opportunities for kids.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really great work. So I always like to, before I close up, I always like to ask, okay, what did I not ask you? What are things that we should be thinking about? And maybe it's specific to, you guys are focused on the whole child, right? And we're focused on working with schools and supporting how they work with kids. So is there anything in there that we haven't covered that you guys have got going on or that we should keep in mind?
Well, we certainly want to encourage people to sign up. We do a weekly newsletter at OICA. It's an email newsletter we send out on Thursdays. You can register for that at oica.org. The very first thing when you go to our website is a pop-up box that says sign up for our newsletter. People become members of OICA. We have membership levels for people to participate. And we do a bi-weekly brown bag lunch for our members where we bring in our lobbying team from the Capitol to talk about the bills directly. We put out information regularly through action alerts to individuals, notifying them when a bill comes up. And that's a way someone can be an advocate from home. They pick up the phone or send an email and have their voice counted. As a lawmaker, I can tell you when I receive 3 or 4 phone calls from my district or a couple of emails, I knew something was going on, and it makes it harder to vote against a good bill or for a bad bill when your constituents are paying attention.
I mean, I've heard lobbyists say one call from from an engaged and active, just normal citizen, right? Someone that's not involved at the Capitol is probably worth 5 conversations with a skilled lobbyist.
Absolutely. I remember I voted for a bill, and this is one of the things I regret that I even thought about this. I was going along on an issue that was a controversial issue. Didn't really think it was that good an idea, but it was passing 90-10. And lawmakers will oftentimes join in the herd and vote that way.
Sure.
I had a constituent contact me after more language was put in, more details were put into the bill as it came back about how important this was to her. And not only did I change my vote, but I debated about the bill. And I was one of the few that changed my vote, but I felt better about it. And it was because a constituent contacted me and shared that information, how it would personally impact them and future generations. Those voices matter when it comes to talking to lawmakers, and we need more Oklahomans engaged.
And I think that's critical because we hear about sort of apathy, and we hear about, can I make a difference, or am I just so frustrated at the partisan level? And I think if people really understand the impact that they could make just by being engaged and advocating in an effective way, I think could do a whole bunch to improve the people's opinion of the lawmaking process and of our government.
I agree. And for your educators out there, if they need some guides to help them in the classroom, We have a legislative process guide and an advocacy guide on our website that you can download and use, and it's great for teaching students in the classroom.
That's fantastic. So this would augment the how a bill becomes a law that we all see. So
it would.
That's cool.
It's more than just the Schoolhouse Rock cartoon.
It is amazing how effective that one little cartoon is, though.
No disagreement there.
Yeah. But no, I think it does do a slight disservice to the actual lawmaking process. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in today, Joe, and thanks for all your work. I'm excited, and hopefully the Resource Center can find some ways to partner with all the great work you guys.
It's a pleasure. I've enjoyed our partnerships in the past, and I know we'll have more in the future.
Definitely. Thanks a lot.